Volume okay in the back? Alright. So how's everybody's day going so far? Wow, I'm glad everyone's having such a fun time on the island so far. But get ready, guys. We're about to have a blast for the next hour. We're about to go on an adventure quite like nothing you've ever done in your life, I can tell you that much. So, before we start the tour and introduce the horses, does anybody have any sort of questions or anything like that they'd like to ask? Either something they're wondering about the island or something they couldn't have answered on the first part of the tour due to time? Anything like that? Yep. Oh, sorry. I thought someone was saying yes, just that. If you guys do have any questions, feel free to ask. This is your tour after all. You can raise your hand at any point. Do whatever to get my attention. So, next up, do you guys want to get to know these three guys in front of us? These guys are known as the Punishers. Over on the left is Rubble. In the middle is Martha, and then on the right is Scott. Everybody say, hey guys. Hey guys. It might sound like that's not their names, like I made it up because I really thought about the first one, but I never really drive this team. I normally just drive, there's like 3 or 2 teams I really rotate between, but I did help name this team. You'd think with that I'd spend more time and know who they are. I love Martha dearly. Martha was a dray horse. If you guys are wondering if these guys have been working together and how long the Punisher's been a team, sort of like I was telling you, it's pretty new. Me and my coworker helped name them. These guys last year were sort of in a couple different teams. There was Scott, who was in the Lumpies. Martha was on a team called the Cavalry, and Rubble has been sort of transferred between a few different teams. So it's not always the case for said horses to always be working with each other non-stop, but there are some cases of that happening. So, without further ado, we can now start the second half of the tour, otherwise known as the better half of the tour. I mean, where do you guys think they send the best drivers, huh? No, it's true. Actually, it's not. None of us are legally allowed to drive the horses downtown anymore. So they stick us back here like Alcatraz, and we're not allowed to leave. Welcome to the Mackinac Island State Park, guys. We're now in 84% of Mackinac Island is made up of state park property. This was the first state park in Michigan. Prior to that, it was a national park. This was the second national park in the world to Yellowstone from 1875 to 1895. And it was turned into a state park after that. The reason why it was turned into a state park, though, specifically, is mostly due to neglect. The state of Michigan, it wasn't necessarily demoted into a state park, and then they threw it on Michigan saying, hey, you have to take care of it now. It was more of the state of Michigan really wanted to preserve the island, thought the National Park Service was going to do it really well. They did it first, but then did not a little bit later. It just wasn't really worth it for the National Park Service to keep it up. In the early days of the National Park Service, they were using military personnel as park rangers all the way up until World War I. Not wanting soldiers to be stationed in a fort from the American Revolution that was also in northern Michigan, they decided to have the soldiers leave, which in doing so robbed the island of workers. So there was no one really around to touch up the fort or the other buildings they had. Up until around 1911, that is when the state park finally had full staff of employment on the island. Before that, oftentimes island residents would just touch up the fort or the other abandoned buildings about every 2 or so years around that time. So pretty interesting. As you guys can now tell, the state park has been thriving and has never looked back since. As you guys can tell, there are less things to look at, like on the first part of the tour. Your driver's always telling you to look over here, left and right, and we don't get to do it as much back here. But boy, do they think they're better than us. I mean, come on, look over here to the left. Look over here to the right. You know, I can play that game. Yeah, I can play that game too. If you guys actually look over here to the left, you'll see nothing but trees. Who am I trying to get?
Are there any deer in the park?
So, I will explain the deer later, but to answer it, yes. There are deer. Who asked that? Was that? Oh, yes, there are deer. And you more than likely will not see the deer on the island, though, because, sadly, everybody, they are normally on the farther out areas of the island. There's only a few deer, and they won't procreate here. They'll just sort of travel here. But, I'm not only going to be mean enough not to answer your guys' question, but I'm going to be mean enough to give you a little bit of information.